7 harvests per year, 5 times more productive than modern farming, 200,000 people fed, and you have probably never heard of it. The Chinampa system of the Valley of Mexico is arguably the most productive agricultural system ever devised by humans. But to understand how it works, you need to see the 9 components that made it possible. Starting with the most important one. The canals between every Chinampa collect organic material year-round, decomposing plant matter, animal waste, algae, sediment washing down from surrounding volcanic mountains. This nutrient-rich muck accumulates at the canal bottom. Farmers, known as chinamperos, dredge this material from the canals and pile it onto the Chinampa surfaces as fresh topsoil. This single act accomplishes 2 things at once. It clears and deepens the canals, keeping them navigable, and it renews the Chinampa soil with every application. Let that sink in for a moment. No imported fertilizer. Ever. In Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, the system was even more sophisticated. Human waste, night soil, was collected from the city, added to the canals or composted, and ultimately returned to the Chinampas as part of this same cycle. Nothing was lost. Nothing was wasted. Modern soil tests explain why this works so well. The organic matter content in healthy Chinampa soil exceeds 45%. Conventional agricultural soil is typically under 5%. That is a 9-fold difference. No imported fertilizer. No chemical inputs. The fertility renews itself with every dredging cycle. This is the heart of the system, the reason it is called infinite. But the canals did more than just collect waste. They were the second component, and without them, none of the other components would work. The canal network. Between every Chinampa flows a canal. Without it, nothing else works. At the peak of the Aztec Empire, the canal network in the Valley of Mexico stretched over 500 kilometers. Today, Xochimilco, one of the last remaining Chinampa zones, still has nearly 180 kilometers of canals. That is longer than many urban subway systems. Stop and think about that for a second. 500 kilometers of hand-dug waterways. No machines, no GPS, just human labor and understanding of hydrology. These canals serve 3 functions. First, irrigation. Water from the canals rises into the Chinampa soil through capillary action. Same physics that lets a paper towel draw water upward. No pumps, no hoses, no electricity. Just physics. This creates a natural sub-irrigation system that meets the water needs of crops year-round. The soil pulls exactly what it needs, nothing more, nothing less. Second, transportation. Canoes carry supplies to the Chinampas and produce back to market. At its peak, this canal network moved enough food to supply Tenochtitlan, a city of over 140,000 people. That made it one of the most densely populated cities in the pre-industrial world. Third, nutrient delivery. As we covered in Component 1, the canals collect the organic muck that becomes fertilizer. The canals are not just water highways. They are the digestive system of the entire agricultural machine. So here is a question for you. What if your garden could irrigate itself? What if your water source also fed your soil and transported your harvest? That is what the canals made possible. If you made it this far, you are not watching for entertainment. You are watching because you want to know how to feed yourself. Good. That is exactly what this system teaches. But canals are useless without something to grow on. That is where Component 3 comes in. The artificial island. The word Chinampa comes from the Nahuatl term chinamital. It means a fence made of plants, that which can be enclosed within a fence of plants. A Chinampa is an artificial island built in shallow lake water. Let me repeat that. An artificial island, built by hand, in a swamp. Construction begins by locating a firm floor in the shallows. Laborers drive wooden posts into the lake bottom. The designated area is usually rectangular, with lengths varying from 8 to 100 meters and widths between 2 and 25 meters. With posts in place, laborers weave reeds, vines, and branches between them. This creates the woven fence enclosure that gives the Chinampa its name. Then they fill the enclosure with layers of soil, at least some of it scraped from the lake bottom itself. This mud fortifies the fence and adds organic material. Layer by layer, each one compacted, each one raising the surface higher. Once the fill reaches approximately 50 centimeters above the water surface, the top layer is left to dry for several weeks before planting. Imagine owning land where there was none. That is what a Chinampa is. Not a garden, not a farm. Land that did not exist yesterday. built from mud and reeds, in water that was useless to everyone else. No machinery, no concrete, just human hands and understanding of how to make nature cooperate. That is the third component, the platform upon which everything else rests. And if you got this wrong, the entire system collapsed. But an island made of mud and reeds would eventually erode and fall apart unless you had component 4. This is what made Chinampas permanent. The willow root anchor system. Along with the wooden posts, workers plant trees. Not just any trees. Ahuejote, Mexico's native bonpland willow. Scientific name, Salix bonplandiana. At the corners of each Chinampa, sometimes along the entire perimeter. These trees are not decorative. They are not windbreaks. They are the structural reinforcement. As the Ahuejote willows grow, their roots penetrate through every layer of the Chinampa, through the reeds, through the branches, through the mud and sediment, and then they keep going. The roots descend into the lake bottom itself. Over time, they bind the entire structure into a single, living mat. This solves a problem that modern floating farms cannot: permanence. A modern floating garden drifts. It breaks apart after a few seasons. Then it is gone. The Chinampa does not float away. It is anchored by living roots that grow stronger every year. Some Chinampas in Xochimilco today have been continuously farmed for over 500 years on the same artificial island. That is not a guess. That is documented. The willow trees provide additional benefits. Their broad branches shade crops from excessive sun. Their dense foliage acts as a windbreak. Their trunks serve as natural trellises for climbing plants like beans. No concrete, no steel, just trees. That is the difference between a project and a legacy. And now you know how they built something that lasts centuries. But here is the part they do not show you. A stable island and functioning canals can grow food. But what you grow matters just as much as how. Component 5 is where the yield triples. The Three Sisters intercropping system. The Chinampa is not a monoculture. It never was. Walk through a modern farm and you will see rows of one thing. Corn alone, wheat alone, soy alone. Walk through a Chinampa and you will see 3 things growing together in the same space. The Aztecs practiced a companion planting system called the milpa. You probably know it as the Three Sisters. Here is what each sister does. Corn provides tall stalks. Those stalks become living trellises. Beans climb the corn stalks. As they grow, they pull nitrogen from the air and fix it in root nodules. That means they naturally fertilize the soil. No fertilizer bags needed. Squash spreads across the ground. Its broad leaves block sunlight so weeds cannot establish. The leaves also reduce moisture evaporation from the soil. Now watch how they work together. The bean fertilizes the corn. The squash protects the bean. The corn supports the squash. Each plant enables the next. 1 + 1 + 1 = 5. These 3 plants, growing together in the same space, produce 2 to 3 times more calories per square meter than each would alone. Let me say that again. 2 to 3 times more calories from the exact same piece of land. No synthetic fertilizer, no herbicides, no irrigation beyond the canals. This is not gardening. This is engineering. So those are the 3 sisters: corn, beans, squash. That is how they grew food. You might think that is the whole system, but that is just one component. There are 8 more. And here is the best part. You can do this tomorrow. In your backyard. In a raised bed. Even in large containers. The Three Sisters is the most transferable component of the entire Chinampa system. But the Three Sisters fed the masses. The next component created wealth. The full crop suite. The Three Sisters fed the masses. But Chinampas produced far more than corn, beans, and squash. Tomatoes and tomatillos. Rich in vitamins C and K. Chili peppers. Dozens of varieties. Amaranth. Protein content of 13 to 15%. Higher than most grains. Quellite. Edible greens with trace minerals. Lettuce, radish, purslane. Fast-growing greens. Medicinal herbs. And flowers. Thousands of blooms annually for Aztec ceremonies. Now look at what Chinamperos grow today. Some farms in Xochimilco now grow up to 95 varieties on a single Chinampa. 95. On one artificial island. Pause for 2 seconds. Think about that for a moment. Your local grocery store might stock 50 varieties. This one island grows 95. Meet Crescencio Hernandez. Every week, He harvests 500 kilograms of vegetables from his Chinampa: tomatoes, peppers, spinach. He abandoned agrochemicals in 2017. He now uses only compost from his farm. Then there is the Arca Tierra project. 7 producers, 40,000 square meters, 27 workers. Every month they produce 3,650 kilograms of food. That generates over $4,000 per month in crop sales. What is your grocery budget right now? What if that money stayed in your pocket? If you want to grow food for your family, the Three Sisters works. If you want to grow food for market, this is how you do it. Diversity is not just ecological, it is economic. But variety alone does not explain centuries of continuous production. The 7th component is invisible, and it may be the most important. The micro-ecosystem, living soil. You cannot see the 7th component, but it may be the most important one of all. Chinampa soil comes from lake sediment. Lake sediment contains a complex web of algae, bacteria, and microorganisms not found in conventional farm fields. These invisible organisms consume decaying material, absorb excess nutrients, and store them. When the soil becomes deficient, they release everything back. Living fertilizer factories, self-regulating, self-sustaining. This is why Chinampas remained productive for centuries without resting the soil. Let me tell you a story. In the 1970s, a researcher tried to replicate Chinampa soil in a laboratory. He took sediment from the canals. He mixed it with organic matter. He controlled the temperature and moisture perfectly. And nothing happened. The microbes would not grow. The soil stayed dead. He forgot the one thing a lab cannot replicate: time. Centuries of continuous cycling. That is not just dirt, that is history. The critically endangered axolotl is found almost exclusively in the Xochimilco canals. It cannot survive anywhere else. The same water that grows the food keeps an entire species alive. Feed the soil, not the plant. Compost, mulch. Avoid synthetic chemicals. The most effective fertilizer is a living ecosystem. But the canals did more than irrigate and collect muck. They grew protein. Component 8 turns water into food. The multi-layer aquatic food system. The canals did more than irrigate. They did more than transport. They did more than collect fertilizer. They grew protein. The alternating canal and island design creates 6 production zones in one space. Zone 1, the land surface, vegetables and trees. Zone 2, the water surface, ducks and floating plants. Zone 3, the water column, fish. Zone 4, the canal bottom, prawns and catfish. Zone 5, the waterland edge, reeds and taro. Zone 6, above the water, trellises with grapes or strawberries. 1 square meter, 6 ways to produce food. Vines drop fruit into the water, feeding fish. Fish waste fertilizes plants. Ducks eat pests. Their droppings fertilize everything. This is not speculation, this is documented. Invented over 2,000 years before anyone coined the term permaculture. A modern farm grows one thing: corn or soy or wheat. The Chinampa grows vegetables, grains, herbs, flowers, ducks, fish, prawns, and fruit, all in the same space. Here is what they do not put in the tourism brochures. This system is vanishing. Right now. As you listen to this sentence, another Chinampa is being paved over. But even with all these components, one question remains. How did they keep planting without stopping? The final component is the least known, and it enables year-round production. The chapín seed starting system. So those are the components, 8 systems working as one. You might think that is everything, but there is one more. And it is the difference between a good system and an infinite one. Most people do not know this part. Farmers collect nutrient-rich mud from the canal bottom. They shape it into small cubes called chapines. Each cube holds one seed. But here is where it gets strange. They do not put these seed beds on land. They float them on the canals. Small rafts made of reeds. The chapines sit on top. Water touches the bottom. The same physics that irrigates the Chinampa now waters the seedlings. Capillary action pulls moisture up. No watering, no labor. When seedlings are ready, the entire mud cube moves to the Chinampa. A typical seedling experiences transplant shock. Roots break. Growth stalls. With the chapín method, 0 transplant shock. The roots never leave their cube. This allows Chinamperos to harvest and plant on the same day. The soil is never bare. The growing cycle never stops. That is the final component, the one that makes the entire system truly infinite. Today, only 2.5% of remaining Chinampas are actively farmed. Most have been converted to soccer fields or parking lots. The system is dying, but the principles are not. You do not need a lake in Mexico City. Closed-loop fertility is composting. Capillary irrigation is a raised bed next to a pond. The Three Sisters works in any backyard. The chapín method is soil blocks for seed starting. 7 harvests per year, 5 times more productive than modern farming. 200,000 people fed. That is what this system achieved for 2,400 years. Imagine what it could do for your garden, for your family, for your food security. The Chinampa is not a relic, it is a blueprint, and now you have it.